Good morning. So, I would like to start my presentation and tell you a bit about my grandfather. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a very, very fortunate person. He was so fortunate because he was able to witness some of the most interesting and exciting moments in humanity. He was able to listen to the first radio broadcast, and then he was able to watch the first commercial broadcast on TV. And then, one day, he managed to witness the first man landing on the moon. And for his generation, people really believed during that time that this is the tip of the iceberg, the maximum point that humanity can reach. Those are my kids. They were born into an amazing reality where everything is connecting. Everything is connected to each other. They don't know anything about a world without connectivity, without internet, without the ability to share and interact immediately with others. They were born into a reality where medicine is available for most diseases my grandfather's generation were dying from. They are actually watching me now broadcasted live and talking to them, so hi kids, welcome. And those are their friends. If you ask my grandfather who are his friends, those are his best friends. If you ask my kid who are his friends, those are his friends. So friendship has a different meaning today. And in a generation where digital relationship comes into reality, where our friends are not really people we had spent a lot of time physically together with them, friendships and relationships mean something else than what it used to be meaning in the past. So we see a kind of a growth in the generation. We see a growth from radio to TV to internet. And we can also see that kind of growth in the events world. When we look on the internet, we see a growth between what we call Web 1.0, where people were creating content and others were consuming it. I was reading the news a journalist was writing, and he was the authority. He was the one bringing the knowledge or bringing the wisdom, and I was the one consuming that content. Then something happened, which is called Web 2.0. And then suddenly borders were changing. Suddenly the one who was creating the content is no longer the only one. Suddenly I can create content myself. I can become a journalist. And then now we're facing Web 3.0, where we have augmented reality and actual avatars and different meaning of existence taking place and going along or participating in our world and creating content. But when we look on the events industry, we're still stuck in Event 1.0, where we have the authority, right, the keynote speakers brought on stage and giving the same pitch, which is, at the end of the day, a kind of a waste of time. If you'll Google me and you'll go to YouTube, you will be able to see the same presentation that I'm giving now, because I gave the same presentation a few months ago in a different event, like all the other keynote speakers. And we don't see a real difference. We don't see a real creation of content coming from the ground up. We do see an improvement. We do see a growth between a very, very passive experience where people were sitting on their chairs, leaning back and listening to the presenter on stage, growing into kind of a more interactive world where people are voting and sending questions to the presenter on stage. But we're not there yet. We're not there at Event 3.0. So what is it, Event 3.0? What can we do in order to welcome the new generation, Generation Y, who is already participating, and Generation Z will participate in a few months' time, or 3 years' time frame, How do we welcome them? How do we create a ground which is compatible with their world, with their interactive and digital world? So when I try to find on the internet an image which is close to the letter Y of Generation Y, I came across this one. And when you flip it around, I think it brings the answer. If you flip that sign around, you're able to take two kind of things and merge them into one. You can take the old-fashioned, old-school, leaning back, listening to a presenter, and the digital world, and combine them together into a more interactive reality. That's what we've tried to do here. We tried to create a space that people are able to, from one hand, listen, but from the other hand, participate in that event and influence the content, influence the actual existence and creation of the event. So, where are we heading? What is the future looks like? In 2004, a very, very smart guy named James Sorowiecki, he wrote a research. And the research, or the book, was about the wisdom of the crowd. And this is a fascinating topic, because if you take that concept of the wisdom of the crowd, you're actually able to do things or miracles that weren't able in the past. I'll give you an example. If I go to my doctor and tell the doctor, you know, I have a pain here, but when I move my hand like that, my legs start to hurt. Then my doctor opens his book and he says, all right, yeah, I learned that at school. And he goes through the book and he says, you're suffering from that kind of disease, and here is the pills that you need to take for 1 week and everything will be okay. But then if I'll put that on Facebook and I will tweet or tell my friends, you know, I have a suffering that it hurts here, and when I do like that, it's suffering on the other leg, someone will have the right answer. And that was the research that James did in his book. He made a lot of experiences like that. He brought a cow to a center of a town, and he brought a butcher, and he asked the butcher, what is the weight of this cow? And he gave the exact number that he thought about. And then he opened that up to the audience, and he asked them, all right, please give me your estimation. How much does that cow weight? And some people said 50, some people said 1,000, some people say 500. But the amazing part was that when they did the calculation and they calculated the average of that, the average was closer to the right figure than the number that the butcher gave. And that's the power of the wisdom of the crowd. So I decided to do the same research, and I called out the industry, all the movers and shakers out there, and I asked them, how would events look like in 2020? Try to envision 8 years from now, how would events will look like? And let's try to avoid the people that will have, you know, a plugged into their mind, walking into the room, having all the slides downloaded to their brain, and maybe it will happen, but let's try to make it a bit more conservative. Right now we have 247 people participating in that research, submitted their ideas, and that's amazing because I wrote 2 books until now. This is my 3rd book. This is the first time others are writing my book and I get the credit for it. So this is the wisdom of the crowd, right? Everyone are writing, I'm just doing the editing and I get a book. But actually I'm sharing that credit with them, so don't worry. But we have about 300 people, and the amazing part is that at the end of the day, they are all narrowing down to the same kind of place, which is another example of the wisdom of the crowd. So, what are the outcomes as of now? What do we see? We see 6 major trends. We see personal influence as a major trend. People want to show to expose their ego, if you'd like, or to expose their minds, make their mark on the world. And they want to do that in the events world as well. Technology, of course, and mobility in particular, taking a more and more important role in the events in the future events. Social learning versus the situated situation where people are sitting down passively, but changing that in a kind of a more social learning experience. interactivity with other delegates, and of course green and sustainable events. So if you'd like a more, I would say, academic kind of explanation, the future event is a mobile, interactive, socially engaged, full of technologies, green event. This is where we're heading with. But technology can be... No, it's not an order. It just was what fitting into the nice sentence I could craft afterwards. So technology can become an opportunity, but it also can become a threat. If you're not playing the right things, it might be very dangerous. And the first thing you see event planners doing is creating a Twitter account, Facebook account, and LinkedIn account. And the main question that I want to challenge is, are we using those technologies correctly? Because if not, you might end up in a very dangerous situation. So, are we really using them in the right way? So I'll share with you two examples. The first example is I called a very good friend of mine who is a meeting organizer for a lot of years, and I told him that I'm arranging an event in London, and I wanted him to share with me his database so I can invite people to my event. And he said, no way. My database is my treasure. I cannot share it with others. It's what will make the difference between me and my competitors, if not the huge database I worked for years to collect and create. And I said, well, fair enough. I can understand that vision, but are you using LinkedIn? And he said, well, of course. And all your friends and all your contacts are in LinkedIn, right? And he said, yes. I said, so you're already doing that work for me. You already created that list. The only thing I need to do is I need to pay LinkedIn $2 and I get 1,000 impressions to your database. And he said, no way, because I'm the manager of that group. I can delete your entries. I said, no, I'm not using entries. I'm using paid advertisements. And I'm telling LinkedIn, please put this advertisement in LinkedIn to those specific people, meeting planners from the UK in those groups. And then I've used his database in order to promote my event, which might be a competing event to his, thanks to the fact that he was working very hard to bring all his members and all his contacts to LinkedIn. Another example is the American Marketing Association. They did a very brilliant idea on that time, and they created a Twitter wall, and they put it on stage behind the presenter. And the presenter was on stage, and people on the audience was engaged and instructed to tweet and share their thoughts with the world through Twitter. And there was a Twitter wall behind presenting that while the presenter was on stage. And that's a real story. I heard it from the head of the association. And at a point of time, the presenter was not really focused and talking about the right things. And someone in the audience said, well, he's bullshitting. Take him off the stage. And others were starting to retweet it and to say other nasty stuff. And then the presenter is on stage speaking, and behind him, all that nasty stuff going live. And there is no one that can control it or stop it or move it until the head of the association went on stage and asked, please guys, let's stop it. Let's give some more, let's play fair. And eventually they apologized and all that, but the issue or the problem existed. And there are a lot of other examples like that, where when you're using those technologies, that you can use them in a way that might play the other way that you're expecting it to play. So we did a research, and we tried to analyze what are the main motivations, what are the main things that event planners and attendees want or expect to achieve as part of their events, or the events they are participating at. The first pillar is high-performance networking. Today, more and more people attend events in order to meet other people. In the past, the main reason for attendance was to get knowledge or to learn. So people were flying or coming into those events in order to learn. Today, because learning can be available in different routes, people mainly come today. About 72% of the people said that they are coming to those events in order to network and meet new people. So that's a major point of interest that we should address and think. How do we comply with that need? What do we do in order to make this need or help those participants to achieve that goal? The second thing is amplified event range. How do we reach out to all those hundreds of thousands out there which are potential visitors or potential delegates for our event? And how do we reach out to them and making sure they will come to our next event? Because if you don't know what you're missing, you're not attending. You're sitting here and you're listening to my presentation. But if you weren't here, you wouldn't know what you missed. So you would never come. So how can we reach out without cannibalizing the content, without providing them the message? Because if we talked about the wrong messaging, when you're doing live webcasting, what is the communication? What do you say to your attendees? You tell them, you don't need to come over. You can stay home and you can watch it from your home or from your office, so you don't need to bother and attend. But at the end of the day, our industry is all about people gathered in one room, sitting down, listening to a presenter. Because without that, there are no sponsorships, there are no exhibitors, there is no money. So until we find a way to generate revenue from those virtual events without having actual existence, our success as an industry is based on the actual amount we have in one room. And therefore, we need to figure out how can we reach out and extend that range without affecting the actual numbers or actually growing them and not shrinking them. And the last part is supercharged interactivity. How can we allow participants to feel that they are interactive, that they are part of the event, not just listening passively, listening to the presenter, but actually interacting, changing, influencing the stuff. So that's my only single marketing presentation. That's what we do as a company. We are developing all those products and solutions that map to those needs. Chance to meet in order to allow people to network. Live studio and e-event, which are delivering content, but not the actual content, not the actual live feed of the broadcast of the presenter on stage, but something else, something that creates an interest and creates a need to participate. And the supercharged interactivity with chance to ask and chance to vote and e-posters, as you can see all over here. We believe in something that we learned from the cable industry. If you look on what we learned from the cable industry, they created something which is called walled garden. And the meaning of walled garden is that you have all the content that you want on your set-top box, but that set-top box does not connect to the internet. It's a $5 plug that they could have invested and connect your box to the internet and allow you to get all the content that is out there. But they are not doing that. The reason they are not doing that is because they want you to consume the content from their servers, from their platform. Because if they are just opening that to the internet, there is no real reason to buy a subscription. There is no real reason to buy those channels. So they created the walled garden. It's so good inside that you don't really want or need to go outside in order to get that content. That's what we do for the events industry as well. We create products and solutions that are the walled garden of your event. And if you'd like, you're most welcome to stop by and I'll share with you some ways to generate more revenue for your event based on those technologies. So with that, I would like to thank you for listening to that. I would like also to share with you that this is a very exciting moment for us because today we have announced the Code Event Server, which is an industry standard which is open to the industry and connects all those technologies together into one platform. So from now on, different technology providers can make a one-off integration and connect their products to other products and without a big hassle to the meeting planner as it used to be in the past. So if you are interested to join the group or join the consortium or take that into and examine and try to work with it yourself, feel free to stop by and I'll share with you more information about it. So with that, again, I would like to thank you very much. If you haven't done that yet and you want to participate in the research for the next book, feel free to drop me an email and take part of it. Thank you very much.